to Breaking the Grade. Hello, educators and breakers. Today we are here with Malcolm Lee, CEO and founder of Gabb Global. Since 2017, he has been breaking the barriers to language learning with his company through virtual reality technology and games. He established Gabb Global to improve the accessibility and effectiveness of language learning experiences for ESL students and passionate language learners. Together with Malcolm, we will discuss the impact of using VR and games in bringing accessibility to language learners. How has his company leveraged these technologies to bring new solutions to language learning, and the challenges he encountered in building his business, and so much more. This conversation will also help you navigate startups in the education and, interior design space, so you can set off on your own grade-breaking entrepreneurial journey. Let's bring in Malcolm and my co-host and mentor and friend, John Gamba.
Hey, Josh. Hey, Malcolm.
Hey, how's it going? I'm still blushing over here, guys, with that great introduction. Thank you.
Cool, man. Well, we are really happy to have you, and I think John and I, we always talk before these shows, and of course, we want to talk about Gabb Global and education and all that great stuff. But we want to start with interior design.
Of all things.
How does interior design enter this conversation? Please tell us about Wilson Lee Interiors.
Absolutely. So first I got to start with my family. That's kind of where I got the builder's bug, if you will, to want to build something, right? Entrepreneurship is like a religion in my household. And at the dinner table, we would always talk about not like what's going on at school, what people are doing. It was always about ideas. How can we take the interior design experience and get it into more people's homes? How can we create a vision that's not only compelling for us in the short term, but compelling for people in the long term, where they see how a home and how you lay out your space can change how you feel on the inside, and how that can make an impact on you achieving your goals and endeavors in this lifetime. That has a lot to do with your environment and how you relate to that environment. And my mom had these principles: clarity, balance, and beauty. And they all work together to help people see the beauty of their own lives, see how that can transform their lives, and help them to accomplish their goals in very practical ways.
It seems like your family was probably ahead of the curve here, because before, the pandemic, we spent some time at home. During the pandemic, we spent a lot of time, and then people probably realized, oh yeah, that's right. We need our homes to help us feel good and feel energetic. So that's an interesting part of this whole thing. Has the pandemic been, an opportunity for your interior design company?
100% yes. So I think we improved by around 80% in terms of our sales. And that's something that we hadn't seen. It was a growth that we haven't grown that much since we moved from Atlanta to Virginia when I was a kid. And it was just people basically telling the same story. I'm here more often than I'm away. And now I'm starting to see how my space has been keeping me from reaching my goals, not only in the workplace, but my family's not even enjoying being so stuck together all the time. We need a change. Yeah. That was the big thing. They needed a change.
Gotcha.
And
John, you spend a lot of time with entrepreneurs. I'm one of them. Thank you. How much is being an entrepreneur in somebody's blood, like it is with Malcolm?
Yeah, I think it's very much in people's DNA. Malcolm, I really respected that story. I share my own entrepreneurial journey, where my grandfather had a dream of running his own business. He created an injection molding company, a plastic injection molding company outside of the city of Philadelphia. Wow. One of my first memories was walking by the garage and seeing a canoe in his garage. I said, "Grandpa, what's going on with the canoe? I didn't know you were into canoeing." And he said, "No, somebody couldn't pay me, so they paid me with a canoe." And that was kind of my indoctrination into the religion of entrepreneurship, doing whatever it takes to satisfy a customer requirement and getting paid however you can get paid. So I very much respect and value that. I think it is in your DNA. It raises a question that I have for you, Malcolm, is how much has your family served in a advisor or a mentorship role as you were growing up and as you started to get interested in business and entrepreneurship?
Oh wow, they've always been there. I've held a question in mind for so long that it became a part of who I was and how I perceive the world, right? And that's, how do we speed up learning? So my parents being who they are is like, well, Malcolm, since you're not going to medical school anymore, you've got to figure out a way to monetize that. It's not just going to be, as easy as you think it is. So they were like, okay, so what is the way that you can scale this, this idea that you have, help people with it, and potentially make a technology that allows people to benefit from that, to where they don't need you in like the service industry like they are, because they said the service industry is what takes a lot of energy and effort, and ultimately it's draining. And their vision for me was more so creating something that was scalable to where a lot of people could touch my content and feel the Gabb Global voice inside of them and become true Gabbers without me having to be there and explain the entire process to them day in and day out. So it's been very rewarding working with them.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I was touched and had a dream come true where my father was a mentor of mine very early on in my career. He ran a large, he was part of a very large company, 80,000 employees, and he wanted to get into this crazy world of the internet. And I'll never forget, he instilled in me, he says, John, I don't know anything about this internet, this World Wide Web, but I can give you some advice. And he said, remember this, and I'll never forget it. The customer isn't always right, but the customer always comes first. Yeah. And, this idea of customer discovery and understanding what the customer's needs. Have you, done the interior design to a virtual reality platform? Have you, drawn some lessons on customer discovery and identifying customer requirements? And has that kind of morphed into your, customer discovery journey with your VR company?
Absolutely. My mother would always say this, right? Henry Ford, when he was creating the car, he took the customer discovery with a grain of salt, because he always said if they got what they wanted, they would have just asked for a faster horse with the problems that they were having at the time. And so it's your job as the entrepreneur to be intuitive and to solve the problems that they have and think about those problems and perceive difficulties with that problem before it happens. So honestly, with Whistling in Tears, there wasn't a lot of customer discovery. We just kind of up and brought the business from Atlanta to Virginia. And I'm not sure, it was countless people. I wasn't at the stage where I was counting yet, but I saw a lot of people just see that she was the owner and just walk out. And they were no longer interested in working with us. It was a very small town. They didn't know who we were. And that caused a lot of problems. And she was down about that for a while. But she started to ask the right questions. And she started asking what their exact needs were. And then we were able to cultivate a luxury interior design brand in a space like Chesterfield, Virginia, where I don't think anyone could even conceive what luxury was. And most importantly, I don't think that they felt like they could have it.
Wow.
And so in the virtual reality space, since I started my business before, the metaverse, and people were kind of that was a buzzword. People were just saying, do you think that virtual reality could really work? And could I actually learn a language? And can I use something like this to replace this? And will that provide me with a more profound experience? And my answer was always yes. And the 3,124 people I reached out to prior to starting Gabb Global, I'd say like 20% of them told me that's absolutely true. The other 80 were like, man, you're out of your mind. So yeah, similar principles.
You're tugging at John's heart. He loves customer discovery, if you can't tell. So that's a big number. But before you can do the customer discovery, I also think it's really important for the people out there to understand that there's a lot of learning that goes on. So I'm going to have to read this, So Malcolm graduated from George Mason University, Fairfax, Virginia. Awesome. With a neuroscience degree in 2017. He just graduated with a master's from Virginia University with a degree in cognitive neuroscience program. So it's not like you just wake up and you're like, I got this idea, let's go. You got a lot of learning to do, right?
100%.
Talk about the learning experience that you've had, because it seems to be very unique.
Absolutely. So I went into college with the ideology of I'm just going to follow, not necessarily my passion, but where I feel like I can help the universe and where I can go further than most people will, because I genuinely want to help the universe learn and help them uncover their language learning gifts. So most of my classes were a lot of biology and chemistry, and those were important for learning, how chemicals are translated in the brain. But I was more so interested in my neural basis of learning and memory classes, the courses that allowed me to see how neurons respond to certain stimuli and how that emotional connection to not only just a new language, but math concepts or anything that you're truly serious about learning becomes much more powerful. It helps the language or whatever you're learning becomes your own, not something that leaves you once you close the textbook. And that was the take-home message from the research that I've done in the classroom at George Mason, as well as at Virginia Union, where I got to focus a little bit more on the certain organelles like the hippocampus and amygdala, deep down in the centers of the brain, that are primarily that's your primal brain. That's what gives things meaning to you. And that's what helps you understand things in more impactful and profound ways. I've spent my time focusing on those particular organelles and how they relate to the learning centers, like Broca's area. That's going to be for how you perceive words that are spoken to you, and awareness, which is how you're able to listen and understand. So how those four organelles work together is my bread and butter.
Yeah, and we're going to get a little bit deeper into the pedagogy a little bit later, but I'm really curious in terms of your training and in terms of the education process that went into this connection between sort of kinesthetic value of VR, the experiential value of VR, and language learning. At a very high level, is there an ability to connect experiential learning with language learning?
Well, this might be a little bit for a later segment, but we've been able to improve motivation, engagement, and learning outcomes by 30% in 14 of the pilots that we've done this for on 3,507 students. We give them a 2-week time frame to learn the same amount of material, and we're able to almost triple what they're able to learn in virtual reality versus the traditional learning methods. And that includes Duolingo and Babbel.
That really is amazing, because you can easily see the leap to math, physics, engineering in terms of kinesthetic, but when you start thinking about language, that's really powerful. And the fact that you have the evidence to back up, and I know we'll cover this in an upcoming segment, is really, really powerful. Thank you for that,
Malcolm. I like what you said. This might be for a later segment. Trust me, I'm trying to hold this horse back because Professor Gamble wants to get into Gabb Global as fast as we can. So thank you for kind of lightly pointing that out. But we're going to get to Gabb Global shortly. Right now, we're going to bring in my business partner from Cascade, Anna. Anna, come up. Anna is going to talk to us about a Elite 200 company from ASU GSV. Malcolm was also. And this segment is about GRID, Gaming Revolution for International Development. So Anna, tell us about the CEO, and then we're going to watch her Big Break segment.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. So Big Breaks is a special segment where the goal is to feature companies that made the Elite 200 for ASU GSV conference. And the big goal here is to feature them in the education space and show that everything they have already started as a company, but just started and already reaching big goals and breaking the grade, changing the status quo about the way we learn, about the way we teach, and how we grow as professionals and human beings. Check out this big break from Marian Nusrat, founder and CEO of GRID.
I'm Mariam Nusrat, and I'm the founder of GRID, Gaming Revolution for International Development. I'm a breaker because we're unleashing the power of no code for video games. So we're building the TikTok for video games. So think about it. Breshna.io is a platform that empowers users to create their own video games with no code and at lightning speed. And it's the lightning speed that actually gives it the name Breshna. So Breshna means lightning in the Pashto language, which is my mother tongue. And the big idea is to empower everyone to be able to create their own education educational video games with no code. So I'm a breaker because I'm democratizing content creation through video games. What led me to becoming a breaker was the fact that I've always believed in the power of video games. I have grown up playing games like SimCity, where I was learning about urban planning without even knowing that I was learning about urban planning. And yet, we do not see video games being mainstreamed for a purpose beyond entertainment, not to the extent that we would like to. And the reason for that is often money, time, and skills. And those are the barriers we're breaking. So we're allowing people to create their own video games for free at lightning speed and without any coding or design skills. So my company is breaking the grade by empowering parents, teachers, and students to become game creators. Often, if you think about the video games industry, parents and teachers are seen as passive consumers of video games, but not as empowered content creators. And this is the generation of content creation. We see TikTok and we see all this content being created. So why not, if TikTok can work for videos, why not have Breshna work for video games? The challenge that almost broke me was the fact that the gaming industry is a little bit hard to penetrate. It's very, the barriers are very high, and it's unfortunately not as diverse. So often my own imposter syndrome became my biggest challenge that almost broke me. But I think we've rallied, we've been building in public, and so we have a community around us, and that's what keeps us going every single day. My future plans to break the education industry include operating at the intersection of no code, Web3, and video games. So imagine a classroom where you'll be able to do a math game instead of a math quiz, or kids will be able to do their own homework as a video game. Once they've created the video game, they get to take it in the Breshnaverse, which is a virtual carnival. So everyone gets to get together and, just like a real life carnival, play their educational video games and actually participate in a game economy, which is a Web3 token economy. So that's how we're breaking the education system, is by no code, Web3, and video games. My best advice to a fellow entrepreneur in the education space is the 3 Ps. So it's purpose, perseverance, and passion. If you show up with purpose every single day and work towards something that you have passion for, then you're gonna get there. Entrepreneurship is an uphill battle, but I think the 3 Ps make the journey way easier.
The 3 Ps.
Yeah.
Cool, right? Anna, talk to us about that CEO and maybe more that you spoke to her about the 3 Ps.
Yeah. Well, especially the fact that she's very young and she's a female entrepreneur. So this is already like a big thing for me. Yeah. But I like the idea of, again, the content creation, but making this available for everyone. I have never been like a math person. So being able like to create a video game, which I love, but like, how can I code if I'm not a good math person, So if I don't have to code and I can build something, I think this is amazing. This is like inclusion and diversity in the same space and being able to create.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Anna. We're going to move back to Gabb Global, and Malcolm, can you draw some distinctions between Grid and Gabb Global, and of course, tell us more about Gabb Global?
Absolutely. So I see a lot of clear distinctions, just making the learning process more effective, but also utilizing the social brain. So a lot of the traditional approaches, those methods are going to be focused on grammar drills, a classroom setting, and memories for abstract processing. And it's going to be some lab-based, age, time-tested methods for evaluating the process over time and how much students are learning. The social brain is going to focus on a socially interactive brain. You're going to be in virtual reality learning with your peers. It's going to be more collaborative. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Bloom's taxonomy of learning chart. They're there at the top. You're able to create your own content and create your own learning experience, which is tremendously more powerful. And then you're providing a more self-exploratory learning environment in virtual reality where students feel more free to make those mistakes that maybe in a classroom setting you might be called out, or, oh yeah, you didn't understand that, but I do. Ha ha, you don't know as much as I do. And then the whole embodiment in the learning process in Gabb Global, you're able to pick up objects and interact with them. You can learn what different objects and words mean and how not only they relate to the environment, but how they relate to you as an individual, which is the most powerful way to continue learning. So yeah, Gabb Global, we are the VR language learning platform. I believe we have a couple of competitors, but we are helping users uncover their learning gifts in real time.
Yeah, and Malcolm, you talked there about real world problem solving and making the process of acquiring knowledge more relevant. Tell us about that and the importance of college and career readiness. You know the relevancy of the learning, and making it more engaging through a virtual environment.
Absolutely. So the students that we're helping right now, they are ESL students. 9 of the pilots happened in California. And their biggest issue was they weren't getting the same language learning exposure at home. And when they were in the classroom, even in the ESL classroom where there are only 78,000 educators helping 5.6 million students, they honestly felt a little bit dejected when they wouldn't get certain conversational things correct, and they had really big accents, and they would almost become embarrassed to the point where they just wanted to be isolated. And isolation is really tricky because it kind of sneaks you deeper into that quicksand. You only want to deal with people that speak your mother tongue, and from there, you're at a glass ceiling. You're unable to communicate with your teachers and tell them what your needs are. And socially, you're not able to become a leader in the school because you perceive yourself as lesser than. And that imposter syndrome that Miriam mentioned earlier is definitely real in the hearts and minds of those who are ESL students. And they're making $1 million less over the course of their entire lives and 34% less per hour coming out of school just because they don't have this gift of speaking English. So they don't realize by going into their shells, they're cutting themselves off for learning and growth and negatively impacting the trajectory of their lives.
Yeah, we're really big at Penn's Graduate School of Education in this lens of research to practice, and you've used a couple of statistics and seem to be very data driven. Is there research that informs your logic model, your value proposition, and what does success look like as it relates to Gabb? Through the lens of a VR-based language learning solution?
Absolutely. So UCLA gave me some funding last summer in order to do some EEG recordings so that we can indicate learning has a neural pathway. And, it's pretty complicated procedure, but to put it very plainly, you can investigate semantic and synaptic aspects in learning, looking at how the synapses are wiring and firing when they're triggered by certain vocabulary words that they learned in VR versus when they have not. Then we were able to evaluate that data, looking at the N40 and P60 waves, which are basically based on central neuroscience dogma that the brain of the cells are firing together, they're wiring together, and how those the electrical energy is firing across the brain. If we're able to show that we're firing more than traditional methods, I consider that a win in the abstract. Having said that, though, there's also the behavioral test. If we've got 6 months to teach a user 2,000 words, and my platform is supposed to do this, and we compare that with the traditional learning methods, I expect to see that across the board, our learners are going to be more proficient, not only in vocabulary, word recognition, and performing better in the classrooms than their peers, but also they're going to be actually have that 2,000 word vocabulary, and they're going to become more of leaders in their schools because they won't have that barrier of entry.
So there is a research basis to what you're doing. Josh only gave us another 2 hours to talk about and geek out on pedagogy, Webb's depth of knowledge meeting Bloom's taxonomy. So Josh, if you can just give us 2 more hours, we'll unpack that a little. Pivoting real quick from that, which is really deep, Malcolm. Thank you for giving the perspective on the research basis of your solution. I want to just ask a really important business question. We all know that the K-12 education space moves at a glacial pace, right? Resistant to change, really, tight funding cycles. often, the antithesis of innovation. Well, when you talk about VR, we're getting into super innovative. Do you find yourself, challenged by resistance to change, and how do you overcome that with the innovation that you're providing?
The short answer is yes. Like I told you, I reached out to a ton of people when I was getting this company off the ground. It did get discouraging at points, almost points where I kind of questioned my purpose on this earth. But the big idea here is just making sure that I was reaching out to people that were already ahead of the curve and are already breaking the grade and already see that the current system isn't totally working. And I was able to connect with the first virtual reality charter school and great customers who saw that doing better is the new status quo. People like Beth Tigan, who offered me pilots back in 2018 when I first finished the product. And it just getting that data from them, even if I had failed a couple of times and people didn't like the characters that I had in game. And, there was obviously issues with the product initially, but we were able to see that it was viable and that people were hungry for it. And my first 10 pilots were people that were genuinely interested in using virtual reality in the classroom.
Malcolm, I think, you talk about the early adopters, and you got to have those people. And then when I look down kind of at where Gabb Global is now, I'm going to rattle off a few names that have recognized your work. GSV, Verizon, Forward, and then a family by the name of Clinton, I think, has recognized your work. So, talk about finally getting some of that recognition. It doesn't mean that obviously, it's clear skies all the way, but you're finally getting some of that recognition we think you deserve.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's really been a process, and just interviewing with them and seeing what they felt about the product just from the interaction, it really was uplifting, because I was going into meetings feeling like, okay, I'm going to have to sell them on virtual reality. No, these people already knew. You've got something viable here, and I want to introduce you to educators. I not only want to introduce you to educators, but investors as well. So it took a lot off of my plate having to explain the value of virtual reality. And it's been tremendous thus far. They've helped us to refine our approach in terms of the customer discovery process, and have given us very specific ways to communicate our value proposition to companies that may be on the fence and maybe potentially opening our mind up to places outside of the United States. It's a $2 billion market to learn English. I just didn't have people that can build out that pedagogy in multiple languages. But thanks to the funding that they've given us and the direction, I'm able to see how it can be done now. I'm the type of guy, I like to focus on what's in front of me at this particular moment, and they've helped me to expand my reach, so to speak.
Hey, John, you coach a lot of entrepreneurs. So it was kind of just a nice little clip there for Malcolm, kind of where his head is at and the company. So if you were going to put on your coaching hat right now, what would you tell him what to do, or advice?
I would say keep doing what you're doing. I was going to compliment you, Malcolm, that every answer is thoughtful. You're not afraid to take a deep breath before you answer a question. And then what comes out is like, man, it sounds like, it feels like he prepared that answer for like 3 hours. It's like instinctual and really great. So I want to compliment you on that. I think in this, back to the world of the glacial pace by which K-12 is changing, continue to use data. You were able to just reel off exactly the evidence of effectiveness with your tool, because once you can break down barriers by saying that it actually works and here's how, and then pin that back on the kiddos that it actually is going to be of value in a quantifiable way, that's the only advice that I can give. But Malcolm doesn't need my advice. He's doing really great. I'm just really kind of blown away by the data-driven approach, the way that you are approaching your pilots and using those pilots to be able to demonstrate evidence of effectiveness, and how that will kind of vault you into the promised land as you continue to try to commercialize this and institutionalize your solution in the K-12 space. Not easy. I'm sure that the way you make it seem easy, Malcolm, but I know that it isn't.
Yeah. This, this show is not America's Got Talent and or American Idol or Shark Tank for that matter, Malcolm. But Professor Gamba knows what he's talking about, and so I think that's some high praise from somebody. And I also think it's really important as we get close to wrapping up here that and we talk about this with everybody who's on the show, is that this is a community. This is a community of breakers. People who want to break for good in the education space. And that there's a community around you who is cheering north of you in Philadelphia, south of you in Mexico, and all around you. And so we certainly believe in Gabb Global. We're here to support you. And if there's anything I can do, John can do, anybody else can do, you reach out, and I'm sure you would return the favor as well.
100%.
Yeah, cool. Well, we're about to hit 30 minutes. I guess you and John probably have a sidebar for the next 2 hours to geek out on whatever you guys want to geek out on. But I do appreciate you at least joining me and our audience and our community for these 30 minutes, and you and John can go out and geek out. Thank you very much, Malcolm, for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure, guys. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Malcolm.
See ya. Thanks for listening, Breakers. Next time on Breaking the Grade.